Hi there, this is Valentine. I recently took and passed the PSM2 exam with a 100% score, and I created this video just to share my experience with this exam. Before I say anything else, everything that I talk in this video will be available in a PDF file you can download right here in the video description. And inside that PDF, you will find everything that I'm talking in this video, exam tips, resources that I recommend, books, and so on. So make sure that you download that as well, because I'll be updating that even after this video is done with very important things. So now let's get started talking about the exam. First of all, a few things that you should know about the exam in case you haven't done your research. So the exam costs $250 per attempt. Fail it once, we'll have to pay $500 in total. The exam has only 30 questions and you can do it in 90 minutes. And the passing score is 85%. Now, there are a few things that are still pretty similar to the PSM1 exam. So first of all, the question format is the same as for PSM1. You get still the kind of questions that you have seen in the PSM1, but much larger and much more complex. Additionally, the PSM2 certification does not expire. You will have it for your entire professional career. And there's no additional material to say like that you really need to know. The Scrum is still really the most important material that you should know. So we can say that apart from paying the $250, the official exam has no requirements. Anyone can take the PSM2 exam. Having PSM1 is not required, but of course recommended. There's no mandatory course or training that you need to attend in order to take the exam. Not needed, but also recommended. And important, you do not need to demonstrate any professional experience with Scrum. If you ask my advice, I would say that if you haven't passed the PSM1 with a score that's more than 90%, I would say even 95%, means that there's still a lot of PSM1 topics that are not clear. So I highly recommend that you invest more time into having a 100% score in PSM1 through open assessments or any other test, or going into the PSM2 material. Also, I recommend that you have some professional experience using Scrum or any Agile framework so that you have this product experience, you know how things work. I typically say you should have at least 2 years of experience, because otherwise, if you have no experience and get this advanced certification, it for me doesn't really make a lot of sense. So experience is more important than certifications. So do not take this exam if you do not have Scrum experience. The exam is much harder and you need to study. Honestly, I think that in order to properly study, you really need to have an interest in Scrum. So it shouldn't be something like, oh, I need this additional certification because for whatever reason. You should take this exam because you're really into Scrum, because you're really interested. You want to show that you have an advanced understanding, and especially that you're really interested in improving how Scrum is applied in your own organization. So this desire to self-study by reading blog articles, by reading books, or any other material, it's super important. Otherwise, you will not have this overall knowledge. It's not about just memorizing some things from the Scrum guide and you'll be able to pass the exam. Now, this is PSM2. This is the second level of the exam. It's much harder and it's about understanding Scrum. I mentioned a bit that the exam is much harder, but how hard can it be? I'd say there are at least two factors of complexity that really make this exam stand out from the PSM1. First of all, there are fewer questions. And if we do a bit of math for PSM1, you have 80 questions. In order to pass the exam, you can still get 12 questions wrong and still get an 85% score. That's a lot of questions that you can get wrong and still pass the exam. Now, for the PSM2 exam, things are a bit more different. You have only 30 questions, and this means that in order to get at least 85%, you can only get 4 questions wrong. I did the math, and hopefully the math is right, but this is what I came up with. Now, compared to the PSM1 exam, the website says that you can get partial credit for partially correct answers. So in the PSM1 exam, it was like this. If you had to select 2 answers and you only got 1 right, you didn't get any points for that respective question. Now, apparently for PSM2, you will get partial points, but it's not clearly explained under which conditions and how everything works. So let's say that, the first complexity is that you can get only 4 questions wrong. And if you get more than 4 questions wrong out of the 30, fail the exam. So this is the first factor that really makes the exam harder. The second factor is the difficulty itself. The questions are much harder. In the PSM-1 exam, you had to select the best answer from a bunch of answers that were already obviously wrong if you had some understanding of the Scrum guide. So you can say it was much easier. Now in the PSM-2 exam, you have to select the best of the best. You already have pretty good options. You will rarely find options where you say, this is obviously wrong. Oh my God, this is an easy exam. No, you'll have you're looking at 4 answers, you'll say, well, all of them are quite okay. Then you will have to look for flaws into them and to see really minor things that change if that respective answer is the correct one or incorrect one. And additionally, exam questions are super long. So you really need for 1.5 hours to stay super focused on reading a lot of text and reading all the answers have a lot of text and really need to process all this information in a very short amount of time. And again, that makes the exam harder than PSM-1, where you had only simple questions. You can easily look through them and find which one is the correct answer. So for the reasons that I mentioned, you should be prepared to actually pay double for this exam. There's absolutely no guarantee how much you prepare. You can still easily get 4 questions wrong and fail the exam. So you should think in advance if you are prepared to pay $500 for passing this exam, just in case you fail the first time for whatever reason. So this is definitely something you should take into consideration. Finally, some good news about this. Compared to PSM-1, if you had time issues in PSM-1, some students have, others don't have it. Well, I can assure you that in PSM-2, you'll have more time. It's 3 minutes per question. And hopefully you're a fast reader because, as I said, there's a lot of text. But my feeling in the exam was I had time to go over all questions, to read them, to select the answers. At the end, I still had maybe 15 minutes to review some of the questions. So for me, it was comfortable, but still it wasn't at the level where I said, I had so much time, I can easily waste it or go over all questions. It really depends. This was my experience. It can be different in your case. For the PSM-2 exam, there are no official open assessments. I think the reason for that is this is an advanced level exam. You really do not want to have a lot of people. And I also did a math and I noticed that only about 2% of the PSM-1 certificate holders actually have PSM-2 as well. 2%. There are a bunch of people who have PSM-1. Only 2% of them have PSM-2. So I think Scrum.org doesn't want to have a lot of people who take this exam just by memorizing some questions or doing a lot of practice tests in the open assessments or any other assessments. So for that reason, I think it's a good thing. It's really for people who are more into Scrum, really about understanding Scrum and not just by memorizing some questions. It's definitely an advantage if you are one of the 2% who have PSM-2 as well. But I also think that PSM-2 is not for everyone. Why I'm saying this is, first of all, PSM-2 doesn't really compensate for real project experience. It cannot. It's just a theoretical thing. You can have PSM-2 and no experience at all. That would not make any sense. Depending on the organization or why are you taking this exam, for example, to get a better job, or is this required, you really need to think about why are you doing this. This certification can also be somewhat redundant. So if the organization where you're trying to get a job doesn't really care about PSM-2, then at least from this perspective, will not be a win for you because you will be investing a lot of time, some money, and in the end, you may not get the recognition for doing that. So that's something that you need to consider. Additionally, there are many other kinds of certification. So if you have PSM-1 and you take PSM-2, it is redundant from the perspective that's still about the Scrum Master role, still about the Scrum framework. And there are many other certifications that can help you have like a broader spectrum of certifications, not only like from scrum.org and Scrum Agile related. There can be other topics that may be relevant for you. So just to sum up a bit, PSM2 is not only more expensive than PSM1, it's also harder to get. And you need to invest more time and resources in order to obtain it, and more self-study is necessary. And overall, I say PSM2 is not for everyone. If you are really into Scrum, then you should look for PSM2. Otherwise, take what I said from this video and do something else with your time. It's totally fine. Not everyone has to have PSM2. And you should really balance the effort and the benefits of getting this certification. Now, if you're still unsure if PSM2 is right for you, what I typically recommend is looking at existing jobs. If you want to switch your job and you want to apply for another organization, then do a search online and you will find jobs and you will see there which certifications are required. Maybe PSM2 is not required. Maybe it's recommended. For example, you will definitely have an advantage if you apply for a Scrum Master job and a company receives 20 applications, but you're the only one that has the PSM2 certification. That may be an advantage. But of course, this is just complementary to your experience that you already have. So I wouldn't pick someone just because it has a lot of certifications. Real project experience is more important. Now, if you really want to take this exam, here are some tips. The first step is to properly prepare for it. Again, in the PDF that I will link in the description, you will find resources and a path of things that I think you should learn. You will find a step-by-step path on how you can properly prepare for the PSM2 exam. And when you're in advance, it's not a silver bullet. It's just the path that I recommend and how I would do it. And if you want to self-study, this is a good starting point. Additionally, I recommend redoing all the open assessments, and you'll find a lot of other open assessments on scrum.org. Make sure you take all those assessments. They are from different topics. They may still help you understand Scrum and Agile overall. Also, if you had any courses or any assessments from PSM1, you should get a 100% score in those as well. So the PSM1 shouldn't be a topic anymore. You shouldn't start your preparation for PSM2 if PSM1 is still like not 100% sure. Don't do that. Additionally, you really need to study the Scrum Guide. And I mentioned the word here, study, not read, study. And what I mean by study is that you shouldn't read the Scrum Guide from the beginning to the end and say, oh, I read it 20 times. This is not the way I recommend. This is not the way I would do it. You should really focus on specific parts of the Scrum Guide. If you're unsure about the role of the Scrum Master, then you should only read that respective part of the Scrum Guide where it says which one is the role of the Scrum Master. And now if you think you are prepared for the exam, here are some exam tips as well. First of all, be fresh. Don't do this exam when you're tired. It's 1.5 hours. There's a lot of text that you need to read. So really pay attention to it. You already invested $250 in taking it. I recommend doing it in the morning when you're relaxed, when you're fresh, when you're rested, everything, so that your mind is like this and you can really focus on the exam. Additionally, even if the exam is 1.5 hours, it doesn't mean that you should be wasting time. So do proper time management. Always look at the clock and look at your progress. Typically, I recommend not leaving any unanswered questions. Make your pick when you look at the question first, because there's already a lot of text that you need to look into. So think about that. You will never have the chance to go back to the respective question and make your best answer. And the interface of the exam is quite similar to the open assessments or to the PSM1 exam. You cannot mark any questions. You will have like the main question in front of your screen, and underneath you will find the rest of the questions. So you need a pen and paper in order to write which questions you want to review. That's super important. In addition to that, make sure that you have everything on the desk. Pen, paper. Make sure that your laptop is connected to a power supply and you don't run out of electricity in the middle of the exam. If you need, make sure that you have some snacks, some sweets. Really do not get up from the desk where you're taking the exam. Also, make sure that everyone around you knows that you're taking an exam so that you don't get interrupted, because this It's so easy to get those 4 questions wrong just by having some interruptions and not being 100% focused. You wouldn't believe it. It's super important that in the exam you read the questions carefully, that you understand how many answers you're supposed to select, and additionally, that you read all the answers. And all possible answers will typically contain at least 2 or 3 lines of text. Don't only read the beginning of the answer, make sure you read the entire answer, because sometimes you may find something in that answer that is against the Scrum Guide, and that of course will make that answer invalid. So it's important that you read the entire thing. Don't just read the beginning and say, oh, this looks good, I'll mark it. And regarding marking answers, first check how many answers you're supposed to select. Don't start selecting answers before you read that you need to select the best one, or especially when there are checkboxes that you need to select the 2 best answers or the 3 best answers. That's super, super important. During the exam, you will be uncomfortable and unsure because the questions are harder. And what this means, you will have this feeling of, well, I'm really not 100% sure. All these answers sort of look the same. And you should expect this. This, from my point of view, this is normal because this is the advanced level. It's no longer so easy to identify all the answers that are wrong. What I do recommend is taking a process of elimination, still looking at the answers that are wrong, eliminating those visually on the screen, and then focusing only on the remaining options. And from the remaining options, try to make your best pick. Finally, I wish you good luck with the exam. Make sure that you leave a comment in the section below to let me know if this video helped you, if it gave you an overview of what to expect in the PSM2 exam. Also remember to download the PDF guide. I put there all my information, everything I talked about in this video, just in a bit more detail. You can download that, and hopefully you will be able to pass the PSM2 exam if you really want to. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel for more Scrum related content, and see you next time. Bye bye.